The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of Le Bernardin Noir, Manhattan's most exclusive fine dining establishment. In the corner of the opulent dining room sat a pristine Bösendorfer grand piano, its ebony surface reflecting the warm glow of candlelit tables where billionaires and celebrities savored $1,000 meals. The piano had been silent for weeks, ever since their regular accompanist had departed for a European tour, leaving the restaurant's sophisticated ambiance incomplete. What none of the wealthy patrons knew was that their salvation had been walking among them every night, carrying water glasses and taking orders with a quiet grace that made her nearly invisible to their world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Elena Vasquez moved through the dining room with practiced efficiency, her black uniform crisp despite the demanding 12-hour shift ahead. At 28, she had perfected the art of being present yet unnoticed, a skill essential for survival in the service industry. Her dark hair was pulled back in the regulation style, and her movements carried a rhythm that seemed almost musical as she navigated between tables of Manhattan's elite. The wealthy diners barely glanced in her direction as she refilled their wine glasses and cleared their plates, their conversations flowing around her like water around a stone. She had been working at Le Bernardin Noir for 6 years, ever since arriving in New York from a small town in upstate New York where her dreams had felt too big for the narrow streets and limited opportunities. Elena's journey to this moment had been marked by sacrifice and determination, fueled by a secret that she carried like a hidden flame. Every night, as she served the privileged few who could afford to dine here, she listened to the conversations about art, culture, and music, absorbing their world while remaining forever on its periphery. The restaurant itself was a monument to luxury and refinement. Owner Vincent Delacroix had spared no expense in creating an atmosphere that transported guests to another realm entirely. Persian rugs covered sections of the marble floor, while original paintings by renowned artists adorned the walls. Each table was set with the finest china and crystal, and the lighting was carefully calibrated to create an intimate, almost sacred atmosphere. The clientele included hedge fund managers, tech moguls, Broadway producers, and foreign dignitaries, all seeking not just a meal but an experience that confirmed their place in society's upper echelons. Elena had grown up in a household where music was both salvation and heartbreak. Her mother, Sophia, had been a gifted pianist who dreamed of performing at Carnegie Hall before life's realities intervened. Instead, Sophia found herself working multiple jobs to support her daughter after Elena's father left when she was only 5 years old. Their small apartment above the town bakery had contained one treasure, an old upright piano that Sophia's grandmother had managed to save during the family's immigration from Spain decades earlier. The piano was more than furniture in their modest home. It was Sophia's confessor, her therapist, and her window to the world she had abandoned. Every evening after her shifts at the local diner and the hardware store, Sophia would sit at the worn keys and play pieces that transported both mother and daughter to places far beyond their circumstances. Elena would curl up on the threadbare sofa, doing homework while her mother's fingers brought Mozart, Rachmaninoff, and Debussy to life in their cramped living space. Sophia began teaching Elena to play when she was 6 years old, recognizing in her daughter the same musical intuition that had defined her own youth. But their lessons were different from those of privileged children with private instructors and well-tuned instruments. Elena learned to hear past the piano's imperfections, to find beauty despite missing keys and strings that had long since lost their proper tension. Sophia taught her that music was not about having perfect conditions, but about expressing what lived in your heart. The lessons continued for 7 years, with Elena developing skills that surprised even her musically trained mother. She had an unusual ability to hear a piece once and play it back with remarkable accuracy, often adding her own subtle interpretations that enhanced the original composition. Sophia would play recordings of famous pianists on their old radio, and Elena would listen intently before attempting to recreate not just the notes but the emotional essence of each performance. When Elena was 13, their world collapsed. Sophia was diagnosed with a rapidly progressing illness that made working impossible. The medical bills consumed their savings, and they were forced to sell the piano to help cover treatment costs. Elena watched through the window as strangers loaded her musical foundation onto a truck, feeling like part of her soul was being carried away. Sophia died 6 months later, leaving Elena in the care of a distant aunt who viewed music as an impractical distraction from more pressing concerns. The years that followed were marked by survival rather than dreams. Elena finished high school while working part-time jobs, putting aside her musical aspirations as childish fantasies. Her aunt made it clear that college was a luxury they could not afford, and Elena found herself trapped in a cycle of minimum wage employment that seemed to lead nowhere. When she turned 22, she decided to take the biggest risk of her life and move to New York City with nothing but savings from her various jobs and a determination to build something better. New York proved to be both inspiring and crushing. Elena rented a tiny studio apartment in Queens, sharing the space with 2 roommates to make the rent affordable. She worked during the day at a coffee shop and spent evenings searching for better opportunities. The city was full of dreamers like herself, and she quickly learned that talent alone was not enough to guarantee success. Without connections, proper training, or financial resources, breaking into the competitive world of professional music seemed impossible. The job at Le Bernardin Noir came through a friend who worked in catering. Elena had no fine dining experience, but her natural grace and quick learning ability impressed the management during her interview. The position offered better pay than her previous jobs, though the hours were demanding and the work physically exhausting. She told herself it was temporary, a stepping stone to something better, but years passed without clear alternatives presenting themselves. Working at the restaurant provided Elena with an unexpected education in the world of cultural refinement. She observed how the wealthy spoke about art and music, learned to recognize the names of composers and performers that carried social currency in their circles. During slow periods, she would study the piano in the corner of the dining room, imagining what it would feel like to sit at such a magnificent instrument. The Bösendorfer was worth more than she would earn in 5 years, its craftsmanship representing a level of quality she had only dreamed about. The regular pianist, Marcel Dubois, had been a fixture at the restaurant for over a decade. He was a classically trained musician who had performed with various orchestras before choosing the steady income that came with private performances for wealthy patrons. Elena had listened to him play every night for 6 years, absorbing his interpretations of classical pieces and jazz standards. Marcel was kind to the staff, often acknowledging Elena with a smile or brief conversation when their paths crossed during service.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
When Marcel announced his departure for a European tour that would last several months, the restaurant's atmosphere immediately felt diminished. The piano sat silent during dinner service, its presence now highlighting what was missing rather than enhancing the experience. Vincent Delacroix, the restaurant owner, had tried to find a replacement, but struggled to locate someone with Marcel's combination of skill and understanding of the clientele's expectations. Elena had developed friendships with several of her co-workers over the years, though the demanding nature of their jobs left little time for deep personal connections. Rosa Martinez, the head server, had become something of a protective older sister to Elena. Rosa had worked in high-end restaurants for 15 years and understood the particular challenges faced by young women in their industry. She had noticed Elena's obvious appreciation for the musical performances and occasionally teased her about her intense focus whenever Marcel played. The kitchen staff, led by Chef Auguste Dubois, maintained the high standards expected in a restaurant of this caliber. He had grown accustomed to the way certain pieces complemented different courses, and the silence during service felt like a missing ingredient in his carefully orchestrated culinary presentations. James Morrison, the sommelier, had also developed a friendship with Elena over the years. James came from old money but had chosen to pursue his passion for wine rather than follow his family into investment banking. He appreciated Elena's genuine interest in learning about different aspects of the restaurant business and had taught her to identify various wine regions and vintage characteristics during quiet moments between services. The restaurant's clientele included several regular customers who had specifically requested the return of evening piano music. Mrs. Catherine Ashworth, wife of a prominent real estate developer, had been dining at Le Bernardin Noir weekly for 8 years and considered the musical ambiance essential to her experience. Technology executive David Chen had proposed to his wife at the restaurant 5 years earlier, while Marcel played Debussy in the background, making the piano music particularly meaningful for their anniversary celebrations. Vincent Delacroix himself was feeling pressure from multiple directions. The restaurant had earned its reputation based on every detail of the dining experience, and the absent piano music represented a significant gap in what customers expected. He had interviewed several potential replacements for Marcel, but none possessed the right combination of technical skill and sensitivity to the restaurant's unique atmosphere. Some were too classical in their approach, while others focused too heavily on contemporary pieces that did not match the establishment's refined character. Elena observed all of these dynamics while continuing her nightly routine of serving tables and maintaining the invisible presence that her job required. She noticed the subtle changes in customer satisfaction, the way conversations seemed less animated without the musical backdrop, the slightly hurried pace of meals that previously had encouraged guests to linger and savor both food and atmosphere. Most importantly, she felt the absence of music like a physical ache, remembering how Marcel's performances had made even the most difficult shifts feel worthwhile. The restaurant industry had taught Elena valuable lessons about human nature and social dynamics. She understood how to read customers' moods, anticipate their needs, and provide service that enhanced their experience without drawing attention to herself. These skills had developed naturally over years of practice, but they had also created a sense of distance from the world she served. Elena existed in the space between worlds, professional enough to belong in this rarefied environment, but economically excluded from ever truly being part of it. Her living situation in Queens provided a stark contrast to the luxury she encountered at work each night. The studio apartment was clean but cramped, with thin walls that transmitted every sound from neighboring units. Elena's roommates were good people struggling with their own challenges, but their different work schedules and financial pressures made building close relationships difficult. She often found herself feeling isolated despite being surrounded by millions of people in the city. Elena's financial situation had improved since starting at Le Bernardin Noir, but the cost of living in New York consumed most of her income. She sent money home to help with her aunt's medical expenses, maintained her small apartment, and saved what little remained for an uncertain future. The idea of pursuing music professionally seemed increasingly unrealistic as the years passed, though she never completely abandoned the hope that circumstances might somehow change. The restaurant operated with military precision during service hours. Elena had learned to navigate the complex choreography of fine dining, where timing and coordination between kitchen service and management created seamless experiences for guests. She took pride in her professional competence, even as she dreamed of different possibilities for her life. The work was honest and necessary, providing value to customers and supporting the restaurant's reputation for excellence. During her breaks, Elena would sometimes stand near the silent piano and imagine what pieces she might play for the elegant crowd. She had continued practicing in her mind over the years, working through compositions she remembered from her childhood lessons and pieces she had heard Marcel perform. Without access to an actual instrument, this mental practice had become her only connection to the musical world that had once defined her identity. Elena's co-workers had noticed her obvious connection to music but had never questioned her about formal training or background. In their world, personal histories often contained elements that people preferred not to discuss, and there was an unspoken understanding about respecting privacy. Elena appreciated this discretion, as she found it difficult to explain the gap between her musical knowledge and her current circumstances without revealing painful details about her past. The wealthy patrons of Le Bernardin Noir lived in a universe that seemed to operate by different rules from those that governed Elena's existence. She observed their casual discussions of expensive purchases, exotic travel destinations, and cultural events that would cost more than her monthly salary. Yet she also noticed their human vulnerabilities, the ways they sought connection and meaning despite their material advantages. Music had always been part of that search for transcendence, which made its absence from the restaurant particularly significant. The evening that would change Elena's life forever began like any other shift at Le Bernardin Noir. She arrived early to help with setup, ensuring that each table met the restaurant's exacting standards for presentation. The dinner service was fully booked, with several important celebrations scheduled that would require particularly attentive service. Elena reviewed the evening's reservations, noting which tables would need special attention and which regular customers had specific preferences that should be accommodated. As the first guests began arriving for dinner, Elena fell into the familiar rhythm of professional service. She greeted returning customers with appropriate warmth, guided new diners through menu selections, and coordinated with the kitchen to ensure perfect timing for each course. The absence of piano music remained noticeable, but the excellent food and wine helped maintain the restaurant's reputation for providing memorable experiences. Among the evening's guests was a table of music industry executives celebrating the successful launch of a new classical music label. Their conversation naturally turned to the missing piano accompaniment, and they began discussing the challenge of finding quality musical talent for intimate venues. Elena listened to their exchange while serving wine, absorbing their insights into the business side of classical music performance. At another table, an elderly couple was celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. They had specifically requested a table near the piano, hoping to recreate the ambiance of their early courtship when they had frequented similar establishments. The husband mentioned to Elena how much they missed the musical accompaniment, noting that it had been an important part of their dining experience for many years. As the evening progressed, Elena noticed that multiple conversations had touched on the absent music, highlighting how integral it had become to the restaurant's identity. Vincent Delacroix himself seemed more stressed than usual, checking on tables frequently and apologizing for the temporary absence of piano music. Elena understood that her employer was feeling pressure to find a solution before the missing element began affecting the restaurant's reputation more seriously. The shift continued with its usual demands, but Elena found herself thinking more intensely about music than she had in months. Being surrounded by people who valued and missed the piano performances reminded her of how much she had given up when circumstances forced her away from her own musical development. She wondered what might have happened if she had found a way to continue her education, what her life might look like now if she had been born into different circumstances. Near the end of the evening, as Elena was clearing tables and preparing for closing procedures, an unexpected opportunity would present itself. The convergence of circumstances that had seemed to lock her away from her musical dreams was about to shift in ways she could never have anticipated. The silent piano in the corner of the dining room was waiting for someone to give it voice again, and Elena was about to discover that sometimes the most unlikely moments can transform everything. The moment that would alter the trajectory of Elena's entire existence arrived with the unexpected entrance of Alexander Whitmore at 10:30 on a rainy Tuesday evening. Most of the dinner guests had departed, leaving only a few tables occupied by patrons lingering over dessert and after-dinner drinks. Alexander was not on the reservation list, which immediately caught Vincent Delacroix's attention as he personally greeted the distinguished gentleman at the host station. Alexander Whitmore carried himself with the quiet confidence that comes from decades at the pinnacle of the classical music world. At 62, he served as the artistic director of the Metropolitan Opera House and sat on the boards of 3 major symphony orchestras. His silver hair was impeccably styled, and his tailored suit spoke of old money and established taste. More importantly for the evening's events, Alexander possessed an ear for musical talent that had discovered some of the most celebrated performers of the past 2 decades. Vincent recognized Alexander immediately and personally escorted him to the best available table, apologizing profusely for the lack of advance notice while ensuring that the evening's service would meet the standards expected by such an esteemed guest. Alexander waved away the concerns with practiced grace, explaining that he had been dining with colleagues at another establishment when the conversation turned to Le Bernardin Noir's reputation for combining exceptional cuisine with refined musical accompaniment. Elena was assigned to serve Alexander's table, unaware of his identity or significance in the classical music world. She approached with her customary professionalism, offering the evening's wine selections and explaining the remaining menu options available at the late hour. Alexander studied her with the same attention he typically reserved for promising young performers, noting her natural poise and the careful way she articulated each detail about the restaurant's offerings. As Elena poured wine and served the first course, Alexander inquired about the piano that sat prominently in the dining room corner. Vincent had joined the table to personally oversee service for such an important guest, and he explained with visible frustration about Marcel's extended absence and the difficulty of finding a suitable replacement. Alexander listened thoughtfully, occasionally glancing toward the silent instrument while sampling the expertly prepared dishes. The conversation naturally evolved to broader topics of music and performance, with Alexander sharing insights about the challenges facing classical music venues in maintaining both artistic integrity and financial viability. Vincent contributed his own perspective as a business owner who valued cultural refinement but struggled with the practical aspects of providing consistent musical programming. Elena continued her service duties while absorbing every word of their discussion, fascinated by this glimpse into the professional music world. Alexander mentioned his current search for emerging talent to feature in a series of intimate performances he was developing for private donors and cultural patrons. These events would showcase promising musicians in settings similar to Le Bernardin Noir, where the combination of fine dining and exceptional music created memorable experiences for influential supporters of the arts. The challenge lay in identifying performers who possessed both technical excellence and the ability to connect with sophisticated audiences. As the evening progressed, Elena found herself drawn repeatedly to their table, not only by her professional responsibilities but by the magnetic pull of their musical conversation. Alexander noticed her obvious interest and began including her in discussions when she approached to refill glasses or clear courses. He asked about her background and how long she had worked at the restaurant, sensing something unusual in her responses to musical topics. Elena answered his questions carefully, revealing her appreciation for classical music without mentioning her own background or training. She spoke knowledgeably about different composers and pieces, demonstrating an understanding that went beyond casual listening. Alexander's instincts, honed by years of identifying hidden talent, began to signal that there might be more to this articulate young server than initially apparent. Vincent excused himself to address kitchen matters, leaving Alexander alone with Elena during a quiet moment between courses. The dining room had grown even more subdued, with only 2 other occupied tables and the soft ambient lighting creating an intimate atmosphere. Alexander gestured toward the piano and mentioned how much he missed the musical accompaniment that Vincent had described from previous visits. Elena found herself speaking more freely than usual, perhaps influenced by the wine service or the rare opportunity to discuss music with someone who clearly understood its deeper significance. She mentioned her childhood exposure to classical music and her continued appreciation for the pieces that Marcel had performed during her years at the restaurant. Alexander listened intently, picking up on subtle indicators that suggested formal training or at least serious musical study. The conversation took an unexpected turn when Alexander asked directly whether Elena had ever studied piano herself. The question hung in the air for a moment, as Elena considered how much to reveal. Something in Alexander's demeanor, perhaps the genuine interest in his expression, or the respectful way he had included her in the evening's discussion, encouraged her to acknowledge her early musical education. Elena briefly described her childhood lessons with her mother, carefully omitting the more painful details of her family's circumstances and the loss that had ended her musical development. Alexander recognized the careful way she framed her experience, understanding that there were probably deeper stories behind her measured responses. His years of working with musicians had taught him to read between the lines when people discussed their relationships with music. What happened next would be remembered by both of them as one of those extraordinary moments when opportunity and preparation intersect in ways that seem almost destined. Alexander suggested, with the casual tone of someone accustomed to making bold proposals, that Elena might consider playing something on the restaurant's piano. The suggestion was made partly from curiosity and partly from his instinctive recognition that she possessed musical knowledge that extended beyond theoretical understanding. Elena's initial response was predictable shock and protest. She explained that she was working, that customers might be disturbed, that she had not played seriously in years and could not possibly perform in such an elegant setting. Alexander countered each objection with gentle persistence, noting that the remaining guests seemed absorbed in their own conversations and that Vincent would certainly approve if asked.
More persuasively, he emphasized that the piano had been silent for too long and deserved to be awakened by someone who obviously loved music. Vincent returned from the kitchen as their conversation reached this crucial juncture. Alexander presented his proposal with characteristic charm, suggesting that they might discover whether Elena could provide temporary musical accompaniment while the search for Marcel's replacement continued. Vincent looked surprised but intrigued, recognizing both the potential solution to his immediate problem and the endorsement implicit in Alexander's interest. Elena felt her heart racing as the two men discussed her potential performance as if it were already decided. The practical part of her mind generated dozens of reasons why the idea was impossible, while another part, dormant for years, began awakening with dangerous hope. The piano seemed to call to her from across the room, its polished surface reflecting the candlelight like a mirror waiting to show her reflection. The remaining guests had indeed become absorbed in their own intimate conversations, creating a subdued atmosphere that might actually welcome gentle musical accompaniment. Elena realized that her shift was nearly finished and that the late hour provided a natural opportunity for experimentation without disrupting the restaurant's primary business operations. Alexander and Vincent waited patiently for her decision, both sensing that something significant hung in the balance. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she considered the possibility of touching piano keys again after so many years of imagining and remembering. She thought about her mother's teaching, the countless hours of mental practice she had maintained during her years of service, and the pieces she had absorbed by listening to Marcel's performances. The fear of failure battled with the deeper fear of never knowing what might be possible. Alexander seemed to understand her internal struggle and offered a compromise that made the decision easier. He suggested that she simply play a single piece, something comfortable and familiar, just to test whether the years away from formal practice had diminished her abilities. If the experiment proved unsuccessful, no harm would be done, and they could return to their previous evening without embarrassment or consequence. Elena looked around the nearly empty dining room, calculating the risks and possibilities. The few remaining customers were engaged in quiet conversation and unlikely to pay attention to background music. Vincent appeared genuinely supportive of the experiment, perhaps seeing an elegant solution to his staffing challenge. Most importantly, Alexander's presence provided a level of professional credibility that transformed what might otherwise seem like presumptuous behavior into a legitimate audition.
With a deep breath that seemed to draw courage from the very air around the silent piano, Elena nodded her acceptance. The decision felt both terrifying and inevitable, as if she had been walking toward this moment for years without realizing her destination. Alexander smiled with satisfaction while Vincent gestured toward the piano with encouraging enthusiasm. Elena approached the Bösendorfer with steps that felt both familiar and foreign. She had cleaned around this instrument countless times, had observed its elegant lines and perfect craftsmanship, but had never imagined herself in the position of actually sitting at its bench. The piano seemed larger and more imposing now that she was approaching it as a performer, rather than a server. She settled onto the bench with careful attention to posture and position, drawing on memories of her mother's instruction about proper technique. Her hands hovered over the keys for a moment as she selected a piece that would showcase her abilities without exceeding her current limitations. The choice came naturally, a Chopin nocturne that she had heard Marcel play dozens of times and that held special meaning from her childhood practice sessions. The first notes emerged from the Bösendorfer with a clarity and richness that surprised Elena herself. The instrument's superior construction and perfect tuning created sounds of extraordinary beauty, far surpassing anything she had experienced during her early musical education. Her fingers found their positions with muscle memory that had remained intact despite years of disuse, and the familiar patterns began flowing with increasing confidence. Alexander leaned forward in his chair, immediately recognizing that what he was hearing transcended amateur ability. Elena's touch demonstrated the kind of musical sensitivity that could not be taught, only nurtured and developed through genuine understanding of the emotional content within each composition. Her interpretation of the nocturne revealed depth of feeling and technical control that spoke to serious musical training and natural talent. Vincent stopped his closing preparations to listen, amazed by the transformation of his restaurant's atmosphere. The gentle music seemed to complete the dining room in ways he had not fully appreciated during Marcel's absence. Elena's playing possessed a different quality from Marcel's performances, more intimate and personal, perfectly suited to the late evening ambiance that remained after the departure of most guests. The remaining diners gradually became aware of the music, their conversations growing quieter as they absorbed the unexpected gift of live performance. The elderly couple celebrating their anniversary exchanged meaningful glances, recognizing the return of the musical element that had been missing from their dining experience. The music industry executives at the corner table stopped their discussion entirely, focusing their professional attention on the source of the surprisingly sophisticated playing. Elena lost herself in the music as the piece progressed, her connection to the piano and the composition overriding her consciousness of the audience or the unusual circumstances. Years of mental practice and emotional preparation culminated in this moment of actual performance, validating her mother's teaching about music living in the heart rather than just in technical execution. The nocturne flowed from her fingers with expression that moved beyond mere accuracy to achieve genuine artistry. As the piece reached its gentle conclusion, the dining room fell into complete silence. Elena sat motionless at the piano, hardly believing what had just occurred. The experience of making music again, particularly on such a magnificent instrument, felt like returning home after a long and difficult journey. She looked up to find Alexander watching her with an expression of recognition and Vincent beaming with obvious delight. Alexander began applauding first, followed immediately by Vincent, and then by every remaining person in the restaurant. The ovation was genuine and enthusiastic, acknowledging not just Elena's technical skill, but the emotional authenticity of her performance. Elena felt tears gathering in her eyes as she absorbed the realization that her musical abilities had not only survived their years of dormancy, but had somehow continued developing through her unconscious practice and listening. Vincent approached the piano with visible excitement, already envisioning the solution to his staffing challenge and the unique marketing opportunity that Elena's story might provide. Alexander remained at his table, but gestured for Elena to continue playing,
clearly eager to hear more and to better assess the full range of her capabilities. Elena chose a second piece, this time selecting something more technically demanding to test whether her initial success could be sustained. She began Debussy's Clair de Lune, a composition that required delicate touch and sophisticated understanding of impressionistic style. The piece demanded different skills from the Chopin Nocturne, with its floating melodies and complex harmonic progressions that could easily expose any limitations in technique or musical comprehension. The Debussy unfolded under Elena's fingers with the same natural authority she had demonstrated in the first piece. Her interpretation captured the moonlight imagery of the composition while maintaining the structural integrity that classical music demands.
Alexander recognized immediately that he was witnessing something extraordinary, a level of musical understanding and technical ability that typically required years of professional training and performance experience. Vincent signaled to Rosa and the other staff members who gathered to witness Elena's unexpected performance. They watched in amazement as their colleague revealed abilities that none of them had suspected during her years of service at the restaurant. Rosa covered her mouth in surprise, remembering Elena's obvious appreciation for Marcel's playing, but never imagining that she possessed such remarkable skills herself. The music industry executives at the corner table had abandoned their business discussion entirely, focusing their professional attention on Elena's performance with growing interest. They recognized the quality of what they were hearing and began exchanging glances that suggested potential business opportunities. Alexander noticed their reaction and made a mental note to speak with them before the evening concluded. Elena completed the Debussy with the same grace and musical authority that had characterized her first selection. The applause that followed was even more enthusiastic, with several guests rising from their seats to show their appreciation. Elena remained at the piano bench, overwhelmed by the positive response, but also energized by the joy of making music again after so many years of silence. Alexander stood and approached the piano, his expression revealing the excitement of someone who had just discovered exceptional talent in an unexpected place. He complimented Elena's performance with the authority of someone whose opinion carried significant weight in the classical music world. More importantly, he began asking questions about her musical background and training, clearly interested in understanding how she had developed such impressive abilities. Elena found herself explaining her early education more fully than she had intended, describing her mother's teaching and the circumstances that had interrupted her musical development. Alexander listened with the compassion of someone who understood how frequently economic realities prevented talented individuals from pursuing their artistic potential. He also recognized the remarkable achievement represented by Elena's ability to maintain and develop her skills despite years away from formal practice. Vincent joined their conversation, already envisioning Elena as the solution to his immediate staffing needs and possibly as a permanent addition to the restaurant's musical programming. He offered her the position of evening pianist on the spot, with compensation that would significantly improve her financial circumstances while allowing her to return to the musical world she had been forced to abandon. Elena felt dizzy with the rapid transformation of her situation. Within the span of an hour, she had gone from serving tables to receiving job offers that could reshape her entire future. The practical implications were overwhelming, but the emotional significance of returning to music professionally felt like a validation of every sacrifice and disappointment she had endured. Alexander mentioned his upcoming series of intimate performances for cultural patrons, suggesting that Elena might be invited to participate if she were interested in expanding her performing opportunities beyond the restaurant setting. The possibility of performing for influential supporters of classical music represented a pathway into the professional world that Elena had never imagined could be accessible to someone in her circumstances. The evening concluded with Elena agreeing to begin her new role as the restaurant's pianist the following week, pending final arrangements with Vincent regarding scheduling and compensation. Alexander left his contact information and promised to stay in touch about potential performance opportunities. The remaining guests departed with expressions of appreciation for the unexpected musical gift they had received. Elena remained at the piano after the restaurant closed, playing softly while the staff completed their closing duties. Rosa approached with genuine excitement and pride in her friend's revealed abilities, offering congratulations and support for the dramatic change in Elena's career prospects. The other staff members expressed similar amazement and encouragement, creating a sense of celebration around Elena's transformation from server to performer. As Elena finally prepared to leave the restaurant, she looked back at the piano that had become the instrument of her professional rebirth. The evening had demonstrated that talent and preparation could overcome years of dormancy when opportunity finally presented itself. More importantly, it had proven that her mother's teaching about music living in the heart rather than just in technical training had been profoundly correct. Elena walked out into the New York night with a sense of possibility that she had not felt since her teenage years. The city that had previously seemed indifferent to her dreams now appeared full of potential pathways toward the musical career she had thought forever lost. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight had restored her faith in the power of music to transform lives and create connections between people from different worlds. The chance encounter with Alexander Whitmore had opened doors that Elena could never have imagined accessing through conventional means. Her years of patient service and unconscious musical preparation had positioned her for this moment of recognition and opportunity. The waitress who had served the elite crowd had discovered that she possessed the very talents they valued most highly, and her piano skills had indeed shocked them in ways that would reshape her entire future. The transformation of Elena's life accelerated beyond anything she could have imagined within days of her impromptu performance at Le Bernardin Noir. Alexander Whitmore proved to be a man of his word, contacting her the following morning with concrete opportunities that would establish her credibility in New York's competitive classical music scene. His first invitation came for a private salon performance at the Park Avenue penthouse of Margaret Sinclair, a prominent arts patron whose monthly gatherings attracted the city's cultural elite. Margaret Sinclair had built her reputation over 3 decades as a discerning supporter of emerging talent, with her endorsement serving as a launching pad for numerous successful classical careers. Her monthly salons featured carefully selected musicians performing for an intimate audience of collectors, critics, and industry professionals who possessed both the influence and resources to advance promising careers. Alexander's recommendation carried particular weight with Margaret, as his track record for identifying exceptional talent was legendary throughout the classical music community. Elena's first professional engagement took place in a setting that exemplified the rarefied world she was entering. Margaret's penthouse occupied an entire floor of a pre-war building overlooking Central Park, with rooms designed specifically for musical performance. The main salon featured a concert-quality Steinway grand piano positioned to take advantage of the space's exceptional acoustics, while floor-to-ceiling windows provided dramatic views of the city skyline as a backdrop for evening performances. The guest list for Elena's debut included several influential figures whose opinions could determine the trajectory of her nascent career. Thomas Richardson, the chief classical music critic for the New York Times, attended these salons regularly and had launched careers with positive reviews while ending others with dismissive commentary. Rebecca Chen, artistic director of the Chamber Music Society, possessed connections throughout the International Classical Music Network and had the power to arrange prestigious performance opportunities for musicians who impressed her. Elena spent the week before her performance working with Alexander on repertoire selection and interpretive approaches that would showcase her abilities while demonstrating her understanding of classical music's deeper traditions. They chose pieces that highlighted different aspects of her musical personality, from the technical precision required for Bach to the emotional expressiveness demanded by romantic composers like Chopin and Schumann. The preparation process revealed the extent of Elena's natural musical intelligence and her ability to absorb sophisticated concepts quickly. Alexander discovered that her years of listening to professional performances had given her an intuitive understanding of musical style and interpretation that typically required formal conservatory training to develop. Her ability to adapt her playing based on verbal instruction and demonstration suggested a level of musical maturity that belied her unconventional background. Vincent Delacroix had enthusiastically supported Elena's pursuit of these additional opportunities, recognizing that her growing reputation would enhance the restaurant's prestige and cultural credibility.
He arranged her schedule to accommodate evening salon performances while maintaining her regular appearances at Le Bernardin Noir, where her playing had already attracted attention from food critics and cultural commentators who frequented the establishment. Elena's performances at the restaurant had evolved rapidly as she regained confidence and technical facility through regular practice.
The Bösendorfer had become her nightly companion, responding to her touch with increasing sensitivity as she explored its capabilities and adjusted her technique to match its particular characteristics. Regular performance had also strengthened her stage presence and her ability to connect with audiences while maintaining focus on musical excellence. The evening of Margaret Sinclair's salon arrived with Elena feeling both nervous and exhilarated about the opportunity to perform for such an influential audience. She had purchased her first formal concert dress for the occasion, a simple but elegant black gown that reflected the seriousness with which she approached this career transition. The transformation from waitress uniform to concert attire symbolized the broader changes occurring in her professional identity and social status. Margaret greeted Elena with the gracious warmth that had made her salons legendary for their welcoming atmosphere, despite their exclusive guest lists. She understood the courage required for emerging artists to perform for critical audiences and made special efforts to create environments where musicians could showcase their abilities without excessive pressure. Her introduction of Elena emphasized the remarkable circumstances of her discovery and the authenticity of her musical development. Elena's performance that evening established her reputation within New York's classical music community with stunning effectiveness. She opened with Bach's Goldberg variations, demonstrating technical precision and architectural understanding that impressed even the most skeptical audience members. Her interpretation revealed deep comprehension of Bach's mathematical structures while maintaining the emotional warmth that separated great performances from merely accurate ones. The Chopin ballade that followed showcased Elena's ability to navigate the emotional extremes demanded by romantic repertoire, moving seamlessly between passages of delicate introspection and explosive virtuosity. Her performance demonstrated not only technical mastery, but also the kind of musical storytelling that transforms piano recitals into compelling dramatic experiences. The audience responded with the kind of focused attention that indicated genuine artistic engagement. Thomas Richardson took extensive notes throughout Elena's performance, recognizing that he was witnessing the emergence of a significant new talent whose unconventional background added human interest to her undeniable musical abilities. His subsequent review would describe her playing as possessing the rare combination of technical excellence and emotional authenticity that marks the difference between competent musicians and true artists. Rebecca Chen approached Elena immediately following the performance to discuss potential opportunities with the Chamber Music Society, including collaborations with established string quartets and participation in their annual Young Artist Showcase series. These invitations represented pathways into the institutional classical music world that typically required years of networking and gradual reputation building to access. Margaret Sinclair herself was sufficiently impressed to offer Elena a recurring spot in her monthly salon series, providing regular exposure to influential audiences while allowing her to develop repertoire and performance experience in supportive environments. This opportunity represented both artistic validation and practical career development that would prove invaluable as Elena transitioned into professional performance. The response from salon attendees created immediate word-of-mouth publicity that spread throughout New York's interconnected cultural communities. Elena began receiving invitations to perform at similar private gatherings, charity fundraisers, and intimate recital venues that catered to sophisticated audiences seeking discovery of emerging talent. Each performance built upon previous successes while expanding her network of professional contacts and supporters. Alexander Whitmore documented Elena's salon performance with high-quality audio and video recordings that he strategically shared with colleagues at major orchestras and opera companies throughout the country. His endorsement carried sufficient weight to generate immediate interest from artistic directors who trusted his judgment about emerging talent and were constantly seeking fresh artists to feature in their programming. The Metropolitan Opera House offered Elena an opportunity to perform during intermission of their upcoming gala performance, a prestigious showcase that would expose her to an international audience of opera patrons and classical music supporters. This invitation represented a quantum leap in terms of venue prestige and audience reach, potentially launching her career onto the global stage if her performance met the exacting standards expected at such events. Elena's success at Margaret Sinclair's salon led to an unexpected development that would amplify her growing reputation exponentially. David Kim, a prominent social media influencer who specialized in classical music content for younger audiences, had attended the performance and recognized the viral potential of Elena's remarkable story. He requested permission to create a documentary-style video about her journey from waitress to concert pianist. David's video production combined Elena's compelling personal narrative with high-quality footage of her performances, creating content that appealed to both classical music enthusiasts and general audiences interested in inspirational stories. His approach emphasized the authenticity of Elena's musical development and the determination required to overcome economic obstacles in pursuing artistic dreams. The video was released across multiple social media platforms simultaneously, accompanied by strategic hashtags and collaborations with other influential content creators who could amplify its reach. David's substantial following provided immediate viewership, while the universal appeal of Elena's story encouraged widespread sharing across demographic boundaries that typically separated classical music from mainstream popular culture. Within 48 hours of the video's release, Elena's story had reached millions of viewers worldwide. Comments poured in from people sharing their own stories of deferred dreams and expressing admiration for Elena's perseverance and talent. The video attracted attention from international media outlets, classical music publications, and television programs, seeking human interest stories that combined artistic achievement with personal triumph. Elena found herself overwhelmed by the sudden international attention, while simultaneously grateful for the opportunities it created. Interview requests arrived from major television networks, classical music magazines, and online publications seeking to explore her story in greater depth. Each media appearance further amplified her reputation, while providing platforms to share her message about the accessibility of classical music and the importance of supporting emerging artists. Record label executives who had initially shown polite interest in Elena's development now competed aggressively for the opportunity to sign her to recording contracts. Her combination of exceptional talent, compelling personal story, and proven social media appeal represented exactly the kind of artist that classical labels sought to attract younger audiences, while maintaining credibility with traditional classical music supporters. Elena negotiated her first recording contract with Meridian Classical, a boutique label known for supporting innovative artists and creative programming approaches. The agreement provided her with artistic control over repertoire selection, while ensuring professional production quality and international distribution capabilities. Her debut album would feature the pieces that had established her reputation, along with newly learned works that would demonstrate her continuing artistic development. The recording sessions took place at the legendary Abbey Road Studios in London, providing Elena with access to world-class acoustics and engineering expertise, while creating additional promotional opportunities around the prestigious venue's reputation. Working with Grammy-winning producer Michael Harrison, Elena crafted performances that captured the intimacy and emotional directness that had characterized her live appearances while meeting the technical standards expected of commercial classical recordings. Elena's album, titled Awakening, received enthusiastic reviews from classical music critics who praised both her technical accomplishments and the authentic emotional expression that distinguished her interpretations.
The recording achieved commercial success that exceeded expectations for classical debuts, reaching the top of classical music charts while crossing over to broader musical audiences through streaming platforms and social media promotion. Concert promoters worldwide began offering Elena performance opportunities that would have required decades of traditional career building to achieve. Her combination of musical excellence and public recognition created demand for appearances at major classical music festivals, prestigious concert halls, and collaborative projects with established orchestras and chamber music ensembles. Elena's return to Le Bernardin Noir for a special celebration concert created a full-circle moment that highlighted the dramatic transformation of her circumstances. The restaurant was fully booked with guests who had followed her story and wanted to witness her performance in the setting where her professional career had begun. Vincent Delacroix created a special menu for the evening that paid tribute to Elena's Spanish heritage while maintaining the restaurant's standards for culinary excellence. Alexander Whitmore served as master of ceremonies for the celebration, sharing insights about Elena's musical development and the qualities that had made her success possible despite her unconventional background. His remarks emphasized the importance of recognizing talent wherever it emerges and the responsibility of established professionals to mentor and support emerging artists regardless of their social or economic circumstances. Elena's performance that evening included pieces from her debut album along with new works that demonstrated her continuing artistic growth and expanding repertoire. The audience included restaurant staff who had worked alongside her during her years as a server, classical music industry professionals who had supported her career development, and new fans who had discovered her through social media coverage of her remarkable journey.
The celebration concluded with Elena expressing gratitude to everyone who had contributed to her transformation, from her mother Sophia, who had provided her musical foundation, to Vincent, who had created opportunities for her talent to be discovered. She emphasized that her success represented not just individual achievement, but validation of the dreams and potential that exist within countless people whose circumstances prevent them from pursuing artistic careers. Elena's story had resonated far beyond the classical music world, inspiring discussions about economic inequality, access to arts education, and the importance of supporting emerging talent regardless of background or circumstances. Educational institutions began using her example to encourage students from modest backgrounds to pursue artistic dreams, while highlighting the value of persistence and preparation in achieving long-term goals. The transformation from waitress to internationally recognized concert pianist had occurred with remarkable speed, but Elena understood that maintaining and building upon this success would require continued dedication to artistic development and professional growth. She established a practice schedule that balanced performance commitments with ongoing study and repertoire expansion, working with renowned teachers to refine her technique and deepen her musical understanding. Elena also committed to using her platform to support other emerging artists facing similar obstacles to those she had overcome. She established a scholarship fund to provide piano lessons and performance opportunities for talented students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, ensuring that her success would create pathways for others to pursue their musical dreams. The young woman who had spent years serving Manhattan's elite while harboring secret musical aspirations had not only achieved her own dreams, but had become an inspiration to millions of people worldwide. Her piano skills had indeed shocked the elite crowd, but more importantly, they had opened doors to a future filled with artistic fulfillment and the opportunity to share the transformative power of music with audiences around the globe. Elena's newfound fame brought opportunities she never could have imagined, but it also introduced challenges that tested her resilience and forced her to navigate the complex dynamics of professional classical music performance. The months following her viral success were filled with learning experiences that shaped not only her artistic development, but also her understanding of the business realities behind the glamorous facade of concert performance. Her first major orchestra engagement came through an invitation from the Chicago Symphony Orchestra to perform Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 with their upcoming spring season. Maestro Giovanni Toretti, the orchestra's music director, had heard Elena's debut recording and was intrigued by the combination of technical proficiency and emotional authenticity that characterized her playing. The concerto represented a significant step up in terms of both musical complexity and performance pressure. Preparing for an orchestral debut required Elena to develop new skills beyond solo performance. Working with conductor James Mitchell during rehearsals, she learned to balance her individual musical interpretation with the collective sound of 80 professional musicians. The experience taught her about the collaborative nature of orchestral music and the subtle communication required to achieve unified artistic expression across such large ensembles. The rehearsal process revealed areas where Elena's unconventional musical education had left gaps in her technical knowledge. While her ear training and musical intuition were exceptional, she had to quickly master formal aspects of orchestral performance, such as following conductor cues, managing tempo relationships with different instrumental sections, and understanding the acoustic dynamics of performing with full orchestra accompaniment. Elena approached these challenges with the same determination that had sustained her through years of economic hardship. She scheduled additional coaching sessions with Alexander Whitmore and sought guidance from experienced orchestral soloists who could share practical insights about managing performance anxiety and maintaining musical focus in high-pressure situations. These mentoring relationships proved invaluable as she prepared for her Chicago debut. The performance itself exceeded expectations for both Elena and the orchestra. Her interpretation of the Rachmaninoff concerto combined technical mastery with the emotional depth that had become her signature characteristic. Critics noted her ability to maintain musical intimacy even within the grand scale of orchestral performance, creating moments of profound connection with the audience, despite the formal concert hall setting. Elena's success with the Chicago Symphony led to additional orchestral invitations from major ensembles across the United States and Europe. Each performance built upon previous achievements while exposing her to different musical traditions and performance practices. She worked with conductors who emphasized precise ensemble coordination, others who prioritized expressive freedom, and some who sought innovative interpretations of traditional repertoire. These varied experiences contributed to Elena's rapid artistic maturation and her developing reputation as a performer capable of adapting to different musical contexts while maintaining her distinctive interpretive voice. Concert reviewers began recognizing her as more than just an inspiring story, acknowledging her legitimate place among serious classical musicians based purely on artistic merit. The recording industry continued to court Elena aggressively, with major labels offering increasingly lucrative contracts for future album projects. She chose to remain with Meridian Classical for her second recording, valuing their commitment to artistic integrity over the larger marketing budgets offered by corporate competitors. Her sophomore album would feature contemporary compositions alongside classical repertoire, demonstrating her versatility and commitment to supporting living composers. Elena's relationship with contemporary music began through her friendship with composer Sarah Martinez, whom she met at one of Margaret Sinclair's salons. Sarah had written several piano works specifically for Elena, creating pieces that showcased her particular strengths while challenging her to explore new musical territories. These collaborations introduced Elena to the creative process of working directly with composers and contributing to the development of new classical music. The premiere performances of Sarah's compositions received enthusiastic responses from audiences and critics who appreciated Elena's commitment to expanding classical music beyond traditional repertoire boundaries. Her advocacy for contemporary works attracted attention from other composers seeking performers willing to champion new music, leading to additional commissioning opportunities and premiere performances. Elena's growing reputation in contemporary music circles complemented her success with traditional classical repertoire, establishing her as a complete artist rather than a specialist in any particular style or period. This versatility became increasingly valuable as classical music organizations sought performers capable of attracting diverse audiences while maintaining credibility across different musical genres. The International Classical Music Festival circuit began inviting Elena to participate in prestigious summer events that brought together established stars and emerging talents for intensive performance programs. Her first major festival appearance was at the Salzburg Festival, where she performed chamber music with renowned string players and participated in masterclasses led by legendary pianists. The festival environment provided Elena with intensive learning opportunities and exposure to international audiences who followed classical music careers closely. She formed professional relationships with musicians from different countries and cultural backgrounds, expanding her understanding of global classical music traditions and performance practices. Elena's festival performances demonstrated her ability to excel in chamber music settings, where the intimate nature of small ensemble playing required different skills from solo recitals or orchestral performances. Her sensitivity to musical dialogue and her ability to blend her sound with other instruments while maintaining her interpretive individuality impressed both colleagues and audiences. The success of Elena's festival appearances led to invitations for international touring, including recital series in Europe and Asia, where classical music maintained strong cultural significance. These tours exposed her to different audience expectations and acoustic environments, while building her international reputation and professional network. Elena's first European tour included performances at historic venues such as the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, the Musikverein in Vienna, and Wigmore Hall in London. Each venue presented unique challenges and opportunities, from the Concertgebouw's legendary acoustics that had inspired generations of classical musicians to Wigmore Hall's intimate setting that demanded absolute musical precision and audience connection. The European classical music press proved receptive to Elena's artistry while maintaining their traditionally high critical standards. Reviews praised her musical maturity and the authenticity of her interpretive approach, comparing her favorably to established international artists while acknowledging the unique perspective she brought to familiar repertoire. Elena's touring experiences taught her valuable lessons about maintaining physical and mental health during demanding travel schedules. She developed practice routines that could be adapted to different pianos and acoustic environments, learned to manage jet lag and performance anxiety, and established support systems that helped her maintain artistic focus despite the logistical challenges of international performance. The business aspects of Elena's career required her to develop new skills beyond musical performance. She worked with professional management to coordinate touring schedules, negotiate performance contracts, and handle the media appearances that had become an integral part of modern classical music careers. Learning to balance artistic priorities with commercial considerations became an ongoing challenge. Elena chose to work with Catherine Walsh, an experienced artist manager who specialized in developing classical careers and had successfully guided several musicians through similar transitions from emerging talent to international recognition. Catherine's guidance proved invaluable in helping Elena make strategic decisions about repertoire development, performance opportunities, and long-term career planning. The educational component of Elena's career became increasingly important as her story inspired young musicians facing similar economic obstacles. She began accepting invitations to conduct masterclasses at music schools and conservatories, sharing both technical insights and practical advice about pursuing professional music careers without traditional advantages. Elena's teaching revealed her natural ability to communicate musical concepts clearly and encourage students to develop their individual artistic voices. Her unconventional background allowed her to relate to students from diverse circumstances, while her professional success provided credible evidence that alternative pathways to classical music careers were possible. The masterclass format suited Elena's teaching style and schedule constraints, while allowing her to reach large numbers of students efficiently. Her sessions typically combined technical instruction with discussions about musical interpretation, practice strategies, and the psychological aspects of performance preparation and career development. Elena's commitment to music education extended beyond formal teaching to include community outreach programs in underserved areas where classical music education was limited or non-existent. She partnered with local schools and community centers to provide free concerts and workshops that introduced young people to classical music and demonstrated its relevance to their lives. These outreach efforts reflected Elena's understanding that her success carried responsibilities beyond personal achievement. She recognized the privilege inherent in her opportunities and sought to create similar possibilities for others who might possess musical talent but lack access to traditional training pathways. The scholarship fund Elena had established grew significantly as her career progressed and her earning capacity increased. The program provided not only financial support for music lessons, but also mentoring relationships with professional musicians and performance opportunities that gave scholarship recipients practical experience in classical music careers. Elena's philanthropic activities attracted positive media attention while serving causes she genuinely cared about. The combination of personal commitment and strategic public relations helped maintain her positive public image while supporting meaningful educational initiatives that aligned with her values and experiences. The pressures of maintaining a high-profile classical music career began to affect Elena's personal life in ways she had not anticipated. The demanding travel schedule made it difficult to maintain close relationships, while the constant scrutiny of her public appearances created stress about representing herself and her story appropriately in media interactions. Elena sought support from other musicians who had navigated similar career transitions, learning strategies for maintaining personal authenticity while meeting public expectations. She discovered that many successful classical musicians struggled with similar challenges and that sharing experiences with trusted colleagues could provide valuable perspective and practical solutions. The psychological aspects of performance anxiety became more complex as Elena's career stakes increased. While her early performances had been motivated primarily by joy and artistic expression, the pressure to maintain her reputation and justify the opportunities she had received sometimes interfered with the musical spontaneity that had characterized her initial success. Elena worked with a sports psychologist who specialized in performance anxiety among professional musicians, learning techniques for managing stress and maintaining artistic focus under pressure. These skills proved essential as her performances began attracting more critical attention and higher expectations from audiences and presenters. The relationship between Elena's public persona and her private artistic development required careful balance. Media interviews often focused on her inspiring personal story rather than her musical achievements, creating pressure to maintain a narrative that might not always reflect the complexity of her ongoing artistic evolution. Elena learned to redirect interview conversations toward musical topics while remaining gracious about public interest in her background. She developed talking points that honored her journey while emphasizing her commitment to artistic excellence and her ongoing development as a classical musician. The classical music industry's traditional structures and social hierarchies presented ongoing challenges for Elena despite her artistic success. Some established musicians and institutions initially viewed her rapid rise with skepticism, questioning whether her achievements reflected genuine merit or merely media attention and public sympathy. Elena addressed these doubts through consistent artistic excellence and professional behavior that demonstrated her serious commitment to classical music beyond the novelty of her discovery story. Over time, most initial skeptics came to respect her musicianship while recognizing that her unconventional background actually enriched rather than diminished the classical music community. The evolution of Elena's artistic identity involved gradually moving beyond the waitress-turned-pianist narrative that had launched her career toward recognition as simply an accomplished classical musician whose background happened to be unusual. This transition required maintaining appreciation for the opportunities her story had created while establishing credibility based purely on artistic merit. Elena's repertoire continued expanding as she gained experience and confidence in different musical styles and periods. She developed particular affinity for Spanish and Latin American composers whose works connected to her cultural heritage while exploring these connections through historically informed performance practices and contemporary interpretive approaches. The incorporation of her cultural background into her programming choices allowed Elena to bring fresh perspectives to familiar concert formats while supporting lesser-known composers whose works deserved broader recognition. These programming decisions reflected both artistic conviction and strategic career development that distinguished her from other emerging pianists. Elena's second recording project featured music by Spanish and Latin American composers, creating a cohesive artistic statement that celebrated her heritage while demonstrating her musical maturity and interpretive sophistication. The album received critical acclaim for both its musical quality and its contribution to expanding classical music repertoire beyond traditional European boundaries. The success of Elena's culturally focused recording led to additional opportunities for themed programming and collaborations with orchestras and chamber groups interested in exploring diverse musical traditions. These projects allowed her to combine artistic exploration with cultural advocacy while building repertoire that became associated with her particular artistic identity. Elena's career trajectory demonstrated that classical music could accommodate diverse backgrounds and alternative pathways while maintaining its traditional standards for artistic excellence. Her success inspired other musicians from unconventional backgrounds to pursue classical careers while encouraging established institutions to reconsider their approaches to talent development and audience engagement. The impact of Elena's story extended beyond individual career achievement to influence broader discussions about accessibility, diversity, and opportunity within classical music. Her example provided concrete evidence that talent could emerge from unexpected circumstances and that supporting such discoveries enriched the entire classical music community. As Elena's career entered its third year of professional development, she had established herself as a legitimate and respected member of the international classical music community. Her performances consistently met high artistic standards while her personal story continued inspiring audiences and fellow musicians around the world. The transformation from waitress to internationally recognized concert pianist represented more than individual success. It demonstrated the power of music to transcend social and economic boundaries while creating opportunities for human connection and artistic expression. Elena's journey proved that dreams deferred need not be dreams denied, and that talent combined with determination could overcome even the most challenging circumstances. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.